Hello and welcome along to not another sports pod with myself, David Windsor, and Mr. Oliver Wilson. And this week in episode number 7, Ollie, we're going to be talking about all things Olympics, I think, mate. Which I know you've been covering some of it. So yeah, we're really deep in the Olympics, and isn't it? It's mad because the Olympics that was in Tokyo, Ollie, it kind of just was bypassed. So it's been a while since there's been a proper Olympics to get your teeth into, because the Tokyo one, because of COVID, they postponed it by a year. I'm not sure anyone really cared in the end. There was no spectators, was there? So yeah, we're right in the thick of the Olympics, and yeah, the sun's shining in England, but we're behind the mics.
Well, you're a man of you know, plenty of trips out to France and taking in the delights of what France has to offer. The budding English tourist. I cannot think really of a better place to host an Olympics back with fans again than Paris for the aesthetic alone. Like you can't go wrong with that city of how beautiful it is. Now, look, there's been plenty of things have happened to Paris over the last few years that may make up people think otherwise about maybe hosting a major sporting event in Paris. And there's obviously been a lot of heightened security around various events for various different reasons, as it should be at the Olympics. It needs to be as safe as possible for athletes and fans alike. But it is a phenomenal city for every kind of bit of B-roll that they're bringing through. Like you start it off with that night before it all kicked off, and the moon was there in the center of the Olympic ring, shining through that central ring on that top row of 3 rings on the Olympic logo. And you just think, I don't think you could have a better image in Olympic history than that, with the Eiffel Tower and those rings and the moon behind it. Tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me a building or a landscape on this planet that would be better than that.
I think it remains, the Eiffel Tower remains probably the most iconic single structure in the world. I really do believe that. I think it's so instantaneously recognizable. And I do believe France is the most visited country in terms of tourists in the entire world, and Paris possibly the most visited city. So yeah, it's a city that combines art and history. It's unparalleled, Ollie. And there's a great quote. And again, there's a lot of people that don't like Paris and stuff, but there's a great quote. I can't remember where it comes from, but it's like, that Paris exists and people choose to live anywhere else is a source of great mystery to me. And I just think that's so nice. So yeah, like look, the iconic images are absolutely incredible.
I mean, it's
Bloody hell.
pricey. It's freaking pricey. If you want an answer to that question, it's expensive. It's not a cheap place to go.
Wilson, you'll be swimming in the Seine next. He's bloody loving it.
I don't think there's enough money in the world to get me swimming in the Seine, although they have cleared it out quite a lot. They have spent millions on sorting out the Seine.
Millions, Mr. Wilson. Try 1 billion US dollars. I mean, that is so wild shit out of the Seine. Like, and by the way, I'm not saying my city, London's any better, right? If you try to clean up the Thames, I'm going to say it's going to cost you at least $1 million, $1 billion rather. So
yeah, but we're also not deciding to host like triathlon swimming in the Thames, are we? So
it's bold. It's bold. But I also look, the Olympic ceremony, opening ceremony, which I don't think we're going to touch on too much because other people have kind of spoken about it enough. But I do think that conceptually, it's so bold in a great way to have those boats like along the Seine, to have like the nations on the boats down the Seine. That conceptually it's so beautiful, and it's not really Paris's fault that it pisses it down at the end of July. Like the odds are massively against that happening. It's like the height of the Parisian summer. You can't account for that, but I do think that the conceptual idea to do that is really like fun and unique and very very French.
The idea is great, and it's one of those marketing meetings that's kind of got out of hand though, where nobody's actually put the pause button on just for a second. You know, we've all had these ideas. You and I have discussed over a steak before buying the radio rights to Argentinian football. You have that idea and you start going down it, and various reasons meant that we didn't go through on that plan. Somebody needed to just go, it is quite a long river winding through Paris, and what if it's not great for whatever reason? It was a bit peculiar, and I don't know if it worked. I didn't watch much of it. I mean, a large section of it was me watching that woman on a robotic horse, which at least as a horse at the Olympics that hasn't been treated badly by its rider or trainer. So that horse at least is one up on a lot of the other horses that have been involved in these Olympics. And I was watching it and I was like, I don't really get it. I didn't really get the kind of Assassin's Creed type character doing parkour across the rooftops. I got the Marie Antoinette thing, but then going from that into some like French death metal or whatever. I don't know. And then at
But isn't
least
that the point, Ollie? Isn't that Parisian? Like, oh, you wouldn't get it. Like, you wouldn't get. You're not cultured enough. You haven't read enough books. You don't get it. Like,
I'm
isn't
not
that
sure.
like?
I'm not sure it's necessarily that. It might be. It could very well be. But then at least somebody had the sensible decision to go, sod it. Who does everybody love? Celine Dion. Stick her on the Eiffel Tower. Have
Mhm.
that as the crescendo. And whether you love her music or hate her music, it worked brilliantly. She was caught up in the emotion of it, and it actually showed what it should be. Unpopular opinion, though, here, Dave. All of these sorts of ceremonies need to go. All of them need to be done and dusted with. I can't stand a World Cup opening ceremony. I can't stand Olympic opening ceremony. I think the one I kind of enjoyed as a kid was France 98. Like World Cup 94, I was a bit young, didn't really remember. Obviously, was it Diana Ross missing the open goal when she booted it wide and the
Iconic.
goal still falls apart? Yeah,
Missed the pen.
it's a great moment. And interesting that she misses a pen and Baggio misses a pen as to like bookend that World Cup, which is very nice. But it's I think France 98 to me, I didn't really understand it, but I was so excited for the World Cup as a kid that year that I was like, yeah, this is kind of cool and weird, and this is what happens. But because there's this level of tournaments needing to outdo each other time and time again, and we've had this introduction of things like halftime shows and opening ceremonies to like Champions League finals and stuff, is it not an absolute sodding waste of money to put all of this together? There will be millions spent on this. People will be cashing in millions for being the artistic director, the designer, the curator, and whatnot. And that money could go to so many better things in the sport, let alone outside of sport and helping out the local Parisian area or whatever. And because there's this level of keeping up with the Joneses and one-upmanship on these tournaments, it's only going to escalate and escalate and escalate. And does it provide much? It provides a kind of starter, but the Olympics had already started before the opening ceremony. So the opening ceremony wasn't the opening of the Olympics. I opened the
Ollie,
Olympics on Eurosport with a freaking half-hour build-up to Argentina Morocco,
we're
which
gonna
then
dive in.
lasted
We're gonna
five
dive
hours.
into the VAR chaos and some other great moments of the Olympics. Just quickly on this, Ollie. It, the Olympic ceremony has to exist because otherwise you don't get a London 2012. The Olympic opening ceremony is an opportunity for a country to say, this is who we are at this exact moment in our history. And I think for that alone, it should exist. I don't think it should be binned completely. I don't think all these ceremonies should be binned completely. What I do think is they should be absolutely condensed and be made way shorter and more concise to fit in more with the TikTok generation. Really, it can't go on for hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. I agree. Football is an odd one because we've never really had them, so that does feel really invasive. The Olympic ceremony I can get on board a bit more with because it's just once every 4 years, and as I say, it's like a demonstration of the country. But
Mm.
I take your point. And I think a lot of people would would completely agree with you.
I love the flag
Let's
bearers, by the way.
say again.
The flag bearers and having the teams walking through or being paraded out, I think is great because it means every athlete gets that kind of like welcome to the Olympics moment. And I do think that's awesome. And there's a great honor for the people that do get to carry the flag for their country. That's great. But yeah, there is a better way to do this and stick it in a stadium. Although,
Also, do
yeah,
you think that? I mean, do you think that LA 28 is the next Olympics, right?
mm,
Do you think after they've seen people go down the Seine, there's going to be discussions now being like, right, we are parachuting the teams down from space or something really, really American where they're like, we can't just go back to being inside a stadium for the opening ceremony. The French have done this. Some people loved it. Some people hated it. But now it's America, right? Let's go bigger. Let's go bolder.
yeah. And I don't know how you're not going to have them down the LA River because that is literally just a sewage pipe, right? So no, there's no amount of money that can solve that. And they're not going to be floating on that. And to be honest, LA is such like a weird city. I don't know why you could really like parade them through or anything like that. It's not really a kind of space for that. So it would have to be in the stadium. The I guess the difference is that SoFi Stadium is immense. I know that's where I think they're going to put the swimming there, or is that going to be the athletic? No, the athletics in the Coliseum. But yeah, I digressing and getting way too into 4 years time. But yeah, I don't know how you beat it and trump it, but everybody's going to look to try and do that now, and it's just not. Yeah, it's not the one for me. not the way.
Let's talk about the Olympics then. Some moments that have captured our imagination. I mean, one of the big stories, Ollie, was the Argentine football VAR chaos. You covered the game, so tell us what happened, why it happened, and was it funny, hilarious, frustrating, everything in between?
Honestly, it was kind of
what
a shambles.
happened first of all?
The whole thing was a shambles in that we had 15 minutes of stoppage time added on to the 90. Morocco are 2-0 up after about 55, 60 minutes. And then Argentina come back, pull one back through Simeone. And then 16th minute of stoppage time, there's this kind of chaos inside the area. There's 4 quick chances in the space of about 3.5 seconds before Christian Medina eventually nods home what he thinks is the equaliser. Chaos, pandemonium in the stands, heavy Moroccan fan base, and great, phenomenal atmosphere. Without a doubt, the best atmosphere that we've seen at the Olympic football so far, aside from any French game. And then we're watching all the replays on this because I'm not out in Paris doing it, unfortunately. So we're kind of getting the feed sent back to us, doing it out of a studio. Sorry to break the illusion slightly, but we're watching it and going over the replays. And then as we come back, there's a quick shot of what looks like something thrown on the pitch, but the players are already walking down towards the tunnel. So we are kind of we think we've missed like a full-time whistle. That's a fairly common thing that can happen. You miss a full-time whistle with the replays, you come back, the players are already walking off, you wrap up. So I start kind of wrapping up, and they go to this big wide shot of the stadium, which is, for anybody that's not worked in broadcasting before, if you have a big isometric wide shot of the stadium, that's generally like a generic fill of, we're just going to put this out now for half an hour until we have player interviews and other stuff to cut to, but this is the kind of end of our coverage. So I'm start wrapping up the game because we think that's it. Last minute equalizer, amazing. Start going through our post-match highlights and everything. Still no word from the game. Still no word from any sort of floor manager. Director's all fine with us wrapping up, everything like that. So we get off air 15 minutes after full time. And we're sat there, and Lucy Ward, who was my co-commentator, about half an hour later, 45 minutes, goes, "Oh, it seems like the game maybe didn't finish." I'm like, what? She's like, yeah. It's just saying on Twitter that the players were taken off because of the fan invasion. And there were some fans on the pitch, but we'd had fan invasions throughout the game. So I thought this was just over-exuberant Moroccan fans once more trying to get close to their beloved heroes, because we're on a wide shot, so all we saw were the bodies. We didn't see any real malicious aggression or anything like that coming in. So it's all a bit perplexing. An hour goes by after kickoff, and suddenly it's like, yeah, it's been suspended. It's not over. And we're like, well, what the hell do we do? Bearing in mind, I'm also commentating on Iraq against Ukraine in 2 hours after the full-time whistle of the Archie game, and we're getting our team sheet sorted for that. And then about quarter of an hour before kickoff in that game, it comes through that they are going to play the last 3 minutes of this extra stoppage time that needed to be added on, and there's going to be a VAR check for the Archie goal. And it's like, what the hell? Nobody said this. Apparently, like, the satellite feed was cut because people at the ground thought that, oh, yeah, we're done broadcasting now. This is over. Job's done. Kill the satellite feed because it's very expensive to run, etc. Everybody goes home happy. It's like, no, we've still got a game on. So then they come out. The Argentinians, the Moroccan players, have to go through a VAR check back on the pitch, play the 3 minutes of football in an empty stadium, and the Archie equalizers ruled out, and Morocco win 2-1 in a big upset in the first game of the Olympics. And none of that was seen by our cameras because there was nothing we knew about it for a large part of it. It was absolutely bonkers. It was a wild one, to say the least. And I mean, I hope it never happens again for us in broadcasting at Eurosport, at Warner Brothers, and just in general, because it was all over the place. And it was a game that lost control of the fans, and the referee lost control of it. And it was hectic, to say the least. Yeah.
I mean, that is so wild to not know that a game has been suspended, and then for them to come out and play the last 3 minutes. And absolutely, absolutely crazy. That absolutely why not just finish the game, like everyone go to bed, and then maybe like wake the referee up at 3 a.m. and he can have a look at the VAR then, and then when you wake up, you find out the final score like has actually changed from what you thought it was. I mean, it's just so absurd.
So
All right, yeah, go on.
to me, there's only one actual farcical thing about this, right? Because I think the officials have done the correct thing. There's fans on the pitch. There were objects being thrown. You take the players off completely. That's fine. I can even forgive kind of everything that happened with nobody really knowing what was going on. Like it happens, lack of communication or whatever, that happens. Then getting the players out, you've got to finish the game. Getting the players back out on the pitch and playing these last 3 minutes, again, I can think it's completely fine. The only farcical thing to me is how insane it was that the players had to go back out on the pitch for the referee to then walk over to the screen to do the theatrics of a VAR check, especially a VAR check that was an offside check. So the referee doesn't have to go to the screen for an offside check. He just gets it in the air and says, by the way, it's disallowed. That should have been done in the 2-hour delay that we had from the game being suspended to it being restarted. And the referee just goes into each dressing room and says, guys, it's being chalked off. I'm really sorry. Now, it may well have been done that way. And maybe it was decided that they had to go through the theatrics because any watching audience, because I know NBC went back to it, for instance, NBC Sports with Joe Spate went back to that game and showed that bit live to kind of do the pomp and circumstance of a VAR check for the cameras, but it doesn't need to be done. You just need the referee to say, by the way, VAR has ruled no goal on that Argentina goal. That was insane to make somebody go through all of that just for like showing an audience. Completely ludicrous. Everything else I kind of get.
Look, the referee going over to a pitch side monitor to confirm what they already know is about to happen because they've been told, that needs to end in the sport, full stop. It's performative theatrics. It's nonsense. It needs to go across the board. It's just it's an absolute absurdity. All right, other moments from the Olympics, Ollie. I just want to talk about Tom Daley very briefly, Ollie, because, you know, when you see him at the Olympics, the British swimmer, you think, Jesus, he's been around forever. He's one of those sportsmen that you have to then and there look up how old he is, because you're like, you've been around forever. And I was looking, and of course, when he was 18, he won a medal at London 2012, but he actually competed in the Beijing Olympics 4 years earlier at 14 in 2008. And I went down a bit of a rabbit hole with it. He's now 30, by the way, in 2024, and obviously picked up a medal again this year. And he was interviewed afterwards about whether he wants to do LA 2028. And I mean, I don't see any reason why not. 34 these days with all the, the conditioning you've got and the nutritionists and everything like that. Certainly, I think means you can compete, mate. And maybe you could even go as far as Brisbane in 2032. Be 38. It's not inconceivable. But I just think that kind of longevity of Olympians is absolutely fascinating, because it's just such a ridiculous discipline, and the Olympics exists so relentlessly in like the present tense, the present exact moment. It's not about being perfect; it's about being perfect right now. So for him to do that for so long is so impressive. But I also went down a rabbit hole, Ollie, and found the youngest ever Olympian that's won a gold medal. Do you know how young they were? Bear in mind, the Olympics has been around a long time, my friend.
I'm going to say there's probably a gymnast or something that was like 12.
He's a 10-year-old. Back in 1896, who won a bronze medal, by the way. Good old, hang on, let me try and get this right. Dimitrios Laundras, a Greek gymnast who competed in the 1896 Athens Olympics. He participated in the team parallel bars event and won a bronze medal at the age of 10 years and 218 days. I'm guessing the child labor laws weren't quite as strict those days, but I mean, 10? Ridiculous.
That's insane. Isn't that? Yeah, that is. Would a 10-year-old be allowed to compete?
Well, it was 1896, I guess. I guess a lot went on in 1896.
But in these days, if you had like an exceptional gymnast or something that was 10 years old that could do, I don't know, the parallel bars or whatever, do you think they would be allowed to compete, or would that be like frowned upon? Wait, how old was the Sky Davis? Is it the skateboarder?
Yes. Hang on.
She's like
Sky Brown?
Sky Brown, that's it. Yeah, Sky Brown.
Yeah. Was 13.
Okay. Yeah. And that didn't feel weird, because you see kids skateboarding around all the time, and if they're really good at it, then yeah, go nuts and go. Yeah. All right. Okay.
You've heard my theory on this, though, Ollie.
What? No. On skateboarding and kids?
No one under the age of 16 should be competing in professional sport. I don't think it's fair on the child. I think you are a child. I'm going to say that word again. Child. You're a child. You should not be out there because you can benefit your team or your country or anything like that. You can't go to war at 15 to aid your country. And I know going to war is not the same as competing in skateboarding in the Olympics, but still, you are a child and you should not be competing in professional sport. And it's very irresponsible, in my opinion, of sporting governing bodies to allow that to happen. I think under the age of 16, you should not be competing in professional sport.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand that point.
Certainly, or at least have that debate, right? Like, I think there's definitely a case to be made either way.
I understand it, but like obviously, if you're young enough and you're good enough, and
you're good enough, you're old enough.
Well, if she's competing already in, like, not just in the Olympics but outside, and she'd be competing in amateur tournaments even if she wasn't a professional skateboarder and things like that. So if she, like, it's just the same, really.
Pressure of it, the cameras, the media coverage on a but I don't think they should be child actors, Ollie, which is a different pod entirely. But I don't think they should be child actors. Get our AI to do it. I don't think we should be having a 7-year-old like as a Hollywood star.
Ollie, I don't like that. I don't like AI anything, to be honest.
But a child actor, like, who's making that decision? Like, under the age of 16, you shouldn't be in like a Hollywood film. Your parents, probably your agent pushing you into it. Not for me. Just get AI to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's your answer for everything, isn't it, Windsor? Just get AI to do it. I've got some a running order here. I've got AI to sort it out for us for the podcast. Don't worry about that. I can see ChatGPT running the show in a few years.
What else has caught your eye then, Ollie? I just got to talk about Andy Murray. Just could mention him on previous pods and his kind of stumbling, beautiful, gritty end to his fabulous career. And he did actually win with Dan Evans in the doubles, saved like 5 match points en route to doing it. And I've just never seen 2 doubles players so happy about winning. I'm pretty sure it was a first round match against the Japanese pair. They were just absolutely elated. Dan Evans punch in the air, Andy Murray absolutely buzzing. And when you know it's the end, man, when you know it's like this is genuinely the end and you come from 5 match points down to win, I guess it just gives you that extra I don't know, you're alive for another day kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, his career literally is surviving on the final few hours, isn't it, at this point in tennis? It's great. I think it's cool, actually, that he's going to walk off the court as an Olympian and doing it with somebody else, because tennis is obviously a solo sport, but the team camaraderie is so much better in any sport. That's why, as golf fans, we love the Ryder Cup. That's why people always kind of after their retirement go, I loved being in that locker room, being in that changing room, sharing those moments. And just on a kind of slightly wider point, every single thing is better when you're kind of sharing a moment with other people. It just is.
Oh, he's got a heart after all. That's beautiful.
It is. It's better. It's so much better. I mean, look, like, I'm not going to be too nice to you here, Dave, but doing the Argentina trips that we've done, it's better when you're going through that with somebody else than when you're kind of on your Todd. I've done traveling on my own, and I've been stood in places and been like, God, I wish I had, like, I don't know, a mate or my missus here to be able to, like, share this moment with and something like that. So it is. And I think probably it's better for Andy Murray to be kind of shouldering the burden of the Olympic push, one last Olympic push, because it's a team gold at the end of the day. Andy Murray will have gold, but it will count towards Team GB, right? And if he's doing that on his own, it's probably not as fun. It's probably not as nice. You can sit down with your doubles partner at the end of the day in Brown and just go, hey man, what a ride that was, 5 match points, and break it down together and live in that moment together. So while he's not...
And also, sorry, Ollie, also you'll send a WhatsApp 11 years later to Dan Evans being like, remember that, mate? Or like at the next Olympics, 100% there's a WhatsApp between them. Like, remember when we saved 5 match points? It's just that. I love the quote, like, if you do anything by yourself, there's no witness to your life. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's the same for anything. There needs to be someone else there to experience it with you. Yeah.
No one wants to make a hole in one when they're playing a solo round. Everybody wants to make a hole in one when somebody's watching, so somebody can verify. Yep, did that. Absolutely nailed it.
For sure.
Yeah. So I think it's great.
Yeah, go.
Let him stumble and fight, kicking and screaming across the finish line for it. He's deserved it. He deserves every moment. He's been one of the upstanding sports stars. He's done a lot off the tennis court as well. Never somebody who's been in trouble in the press, or you look at and go, oh, I don't. Yeah, they can play the sport well, but I don't really like what I see from them outside of the game. Just seems like a great bloke. So yeah, let him enjoy his last Olympics. And I think there should be an attitude as well. There's zero pressure, absolutely zero pressure. Just enjoy it. If you get a goal, great. If you don't, it just doesn't matter, Andy. You've done it before. You don't have to do it again. I just want to know your thoughts actually on Emma Raducanu deciding not to go to the Olympics.
Um, I think every professional sports person has the capacity to look at their calendar, and there's so much going on. They talk to their coach. Obviously, the individuals will make the decision, but I do think we don't realize sometimes how many humans there are around the individual. You know, that there's a coach, there's her parents, she's still a young woman, there's her parents, you know, maybe her friends, sponsorship deals, the WTA tour. There's so many things pulling in so many different directions. I personally find it odd because the Olympics is so unique and so unusual, and winning a medal in tennis is actually a really big deal. So, well, winning a medal obviously in any event is, but you know, it's a really big thing. So I'm very surprised at it. But yeah, you just don't know what's going on. It's like, you know, when there's a football transfer and you think, why have they gone there? Or why haven't they done that move? And it's like, that guy might have two kids who are like in school. Like, you don't know what's going on. So I prefer to sort of leave that one, I think, Ollie.
Yeah, no, I that's fair enough. And sorry, my other camera has just gone there, Dave. So I apologize for a second there.
All good.
But yeah, I found it weird. Again, I don't know Emma Watson. I think she comes across very amenable.
Raducanu, yeah.
No, but Emma Watson mentioned it about.
Oh, okay.
She was asked
sorry,
about it, and she said, "Oh, I don't know why Emma wouldn't want to do this, etc." And I was a bit surprised because I would have kind of said, personally, I'd have thought the line would just be, "It's her own choice. Like, it's nothing to do with me. You don't even wade into those waters or anything like that. You just let it happen because." It is a personal choice. And maybe, you know, we know what Emma Raducanu's been through in terms of dealing with the early success that she had. So maybe she doesn't want to have like pile on once every 4 year chance for gold, where suddenly after a solid Wimbledon this year, expectations are leveled way too high for her, and people are expecting her to at least come away with a silver, maybe a gold, something like that. I just don't care enough to put individuals through the intensity of more and more sport when there is so much intensity and so much pressure around sport anyway.
One thing that's been really interesting, Ollie, in this Olympics, same with every Olympics really, but just the tears you get from people crying after their events finished. And because you forget that really, even the household names, we don't really know what they do for outside the Olympic cycle, right? Like, unless you're a Mo Farah, Jessica Ennis-Hill, or Tom Daley, like most of them, there's no money. Like, there's no money, there's no exposure, there's nothing, and that they've grinded away. They've got up at 4 a.m. to do this, and when it finally comes to that conclusion of the Olympics, I think they're just all like, thank fuck that's over. Like, that whatever happened, I'm referring kind of to Adam Peaty missed gold by 0.02 seconds, and he was just sort of crying in his interview, and he was like, these aren't sad tears, they're just tears of it just all being over. And I do think that the grind is just so insane, and 99% of Olympians make no money. Like, they make loads of them like live in their parents' garage and stuff like that. I mean, it really is like that. And the ones, of course, you know, Jessica Ennis-Hill or whoever, like they win gold and they have great moments and they can leverage their name and their brand, etc., etc. But most of them don't, and it's a harsh old world, I think.
Yeah, and I think you're right about the kind of relief of a 4 year build. I mean, you remember Redgrave, obviously. If you see me in another boat again, you have the right to shoot me, because it is, for some of these athletes, you know, it is a 4 year build up. It's not. I'm doing, like, you know, I think tennis is slightly different. Obviously, you've got your Grand Slams, your majors, etc. In the golf and football, it really doesn't come onto the men's calendar much. For the women, it's huge, and it's really weird how the women's Olympic gold means so much in football and the men's doesn't. It's kind of like yeah, if you get it, great. And for Julian Alvarez, who's incredible, the trophy cabinet, like
Absurd.
Champions League,
Absurd.
Libertadores, RG League, Premier League, World Cup, Copa America, now just needs the Olympic gold to finish it all off. It's unbelievable. But for most of these athletes, it's a 4 year grind and build up to this. And I wonder what that feeling is like. And there's only one way I can even come close to imagining what that's like. And that's, you know, I was very fortunate. I got to live my dream of doing a Super Bowl, right? Covering a Super Bowl and commentating on it. And like that was, if you'd asked me when I was 21 to commentate on a Super Bowl, I'd have been like, there's never going to happen. It's a pipe dream. It's an absolute fantasy. And after that, I was a bit like, there wasn't a like massive joy out of it. It was like, oh, that's like happened, and what happens now? You know what I mean? Like you achieve something that you really didn't think would happen, or you get something that you really wanted to do, and you do it, and you're like, yeah, that is almost like a little like looking around a bit lost because stuff as you've kind of aimed your way towards that. And I think it must be even worse for these athletes who they are aiming always at this 4 year cycle, 4 year cycle, 4 year cycle, and it finishes, and there's like this outburst of emotion. But I bet today, if you competed yesterday in that Olympic gold medal game, for instance, you looking around and going, what do I do now?
Mm.
Like it's either, okay, I'm going to take some time off and then we build up to the next Olympics. But if there's no more Olympic Games for you, if this is going to be the last one, like there is well, where's the meaning? You know, it must be
Yeah, of
so
course.
perplexing for them.
And lots of sports stars and lots of Olympians have talked about falling into depression, I think, after like an Olympic cycle, and you can completely understand why. On a different tone, Ollie, and outside the Olympics, I've got written down Marcelo Gallardo and Donald Trump for different reasons. Two unlikely bedfellows. I know I wanted to touch on Gallardo, but let's talk about Donald Trump on the golf course.
What on earth is going on here, by the way? How are we living in a world, right, where the US Open champion and one of the best golfers on the planet right now, Bryson DeChambeau, is making money and millions of views off a YouTube channel? It's so weird that our athletes are now kind of putting themselves into this YouTube content creator bubble too, where they have to be a personality. And hey, guys, yeah. And we've seen Bryson's attitude around, you know, when he first burst on the scene, he was a miserable, horrible bastard that no one liked. And now Bryson's the one who's doing selfies midway through a round at the US Open. It just doesn't make any sense what's changed in him. And I do think it is. The cynic in me is like, yeah, it's a YouTube hit kind of thing, isn't it? That's what you're doing it for. But then to be playing a round of golf with a guy who's running for president, like I just don't understand the world we live in. It's one of those moments where you're like, this isn't really reality, right? This is a former president who's currently campaigning, and we're just putting out views for likes on TikTok and YouTube. It's peculiar. And he gets an eagle. Donald Trump gets an eagle himself. They're doing a scramble, which is where both golfers play their balls, and then you take the best shot, and then they each play a shot from that position, and then they take the best shot of those two, and then they each play a shot. So you're kind of working your way. You basically got two chances at every single shot, one each for each player. And Donald Trump gets a net eagle on his own, like a gross eagle, even not even a net eagle, gross eagle. Two shots, drives the green and puts it out. And Bryson DeChambeau is looking at it, going, "I've just seen the president get an eagle." And it's not, an eagle doesn't happen. Like that's not very often you get an eagle on a golf course, let alone in a golf competition or anything like that. It's mind blowing.
Your knowledge of American sport is far superior to mine, Ollie. But as I understand it, like basically everyone has their own podcast, right? Which you can't say that yet for British sports stars. I wouldn't say loads of them do, but it's not quite. I don't think at the same level. Fair?
Yeah, no, the NBA in particular, there's so many podcasts out with big names. American football is coming on a bit more. Obviously, there's Travis Kelce and his brother Jason Kelce, who's just retired. So they have a podcast, and there are a few others that are kind of coming up because the US has seen that like podcast market boom. And so everybody does a podcast, but it's more like a manufactured radio show in that sense because it's mass produced and it's not like this. We haven't scripted any of this or thought out much of this. We've had a quick
You'd be
WhatsApp
surprised to hear.
Yeah. Astonishing, I know. And yeah, they kind of see that. But also, American athletes are media trained, right? A lot of them have been through college as well. They've been media trained through college. They've been media trained through their professional careers as well. So they get to this point where it's like, well, I might as well make this media training work for me to kind of manipulate almost my brand that I'm putting out there. So it's a really good way for people to kind of change public perception, perhaps, or work from a different angle and making a bit of extra side hustle for when the playing days eventually come to an end. I'm kind of glad we don't necessarily have that with footballers right now, particularly like current footballers, just because quite a lot of them aren't media trained, and I don't know how exciting and insightful necessarily a lot of those podcasts would be. And I think it's like seen as a bit of a faff as well for people. I don't know. Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because like the hardest part about creating anything is gaining that initial audience. because then you're really like you and I now, Ollie. We're essentially talking into the void, plus a few very loyal listeners. And the hardest part is, but if you already have a name and you already know that your first podcast will be listened by 20,000 people, 50,000 people, 7,000 people, like it. The hardest part you've just completely bypassed. So in that way, it's I can see why so many have it, but also just America's just better at sound bites, aren't they? I was just I was producing some content on Farnborough Air Show recently, and we had some great people from all over the world talking. But a minute an American CEO sits down, Ollie, suddenly it just blows you away with how naturally, but also media trained they are, that they just produce these wonderful clipped sound bites that obviously they've said 74 times before over the course of the week, but it just sounds great. And it's just, I don't know, it's just part of American sport, isn't it?
The epitome of that is a very good joke by Jack D, who back in the day had this when he said, to sum it all up, look at the Apollo 13 mission. Like when they're in the middle of space, in trouble, it's just Houston, we have a problem. And if that was an English person, it'd be like, "Oh, yeah, the fucking rocket's fucked,
Bloody
mate.
hell!
I haven't got a fucking Scooby. What's going on here? Help us out, mate. Get us home." Like it's so different, isn't it? It's always so squeaky clean and polished, particularly when you get to that big dog level of the CEOs that you've been talking to and stuff. And
For sure.
and the same with these athletes. And I think the athletes are also they're just better at understanding this kind of brand identity. Whereas I'm not too, you know, you see Premier League footballers. I don't think any less of Jack Grealish for getting battered after winning, and or like Flintoff in the same way with the Ashes and stuff like that for getting hammered on these open top bus tours and stuff. And it happens in the US, but like that seems to stick more with like the English sports men and women that we have. Like Grealish, everybody just thinks, yeah, lager out. Like we've just seen him getting battered for a week and all that kind of stuff. Same with there was a after Wales won a Six Nations, there was a footage of one of the Welsh rugby players 4 days later getting on a plane still in his kit from the game
I
because
think
he'd
I've
been
seen
on a
it.
bender. And it was like, that just doesn't happen in America. Like they have one day where everyone gets a bit drunk and does that, but then it's kind of like, yeah, cool, and it's done. Whereas that just seems to stick a bit longer. That idea of like, yeah, you're just getting battered for like 4 weeks, weren't you? Yeah, having a great time. So yeah, I don't know. It's something different about it, something less polished. I think that we have with our sports stars.
Let's wrap up. This is kind of dragging over the listeners from our South American football content, but just wanted to talk about it very briefly, Ollie. Very self-indulgently, could have done this on WhatsApp, but let's do it on the pod. Marcelo Gallardo, an absolute legend as a player, and then a legendary coach at one of the biggest clubs in South American club football, River Plate of Argentina. He basically, at one point, Ollie, was being like touted by Pep Guardiola to be like the next Barcelona boss. This is in pretty recent memory, by the way. I'm talking 2019. And he left River as a hero. He did kind of nothing for about a year and a half, 2 years. Went to Saudi, didn't work. Now he's back in Argentina, and apparently he's going to take the River job again. You WhatsApp me and was like, and just said, never go back. And I wholeheartedly agree. It's a mad move.
Marcelo Gallardo should be in charge of this Olympic team. You think about the players that he brought through at River. So he knows how to take young players and get the best out of them and have a structured system of football. Like, why Javier Mascherano obviously isn't necessarily doing a bad job. He's got them through qualification. They're at the Olympics. They're bounced back after the first round, first group game loss, etc. But if Marcelo Gallardo wanted to really make a step after floundering in Saudi Arabia, that's what he should have done. He's gone and got himself into the Argentinian national team. Then you can potentially work your way into the national team job for Marcelo Gallardo, which would attract big name European football management options, as opposed to, a hiatus, a failure in Saudi Arabia, and then you're suddenly looking at maybe like a, La Liga DOS or whatever it's called these days, or maybe a championship job or something like that. It's like, it's just not, he has crippled his own career. I think he's created a rug for his own back, so to speak, with that. And going back to River just screams disaster in my eyes. This isn't a River team that he's taking over that is like ready for the Gallardo experience. Like it needs a complete revamp and overhaul. And whether that's actually possible with the changes we've seen in South American football over the last 5 years, it's very, very difficult to get back to competing with the Brazilian sides and with the lure of Saudi and MLS money for a lot of these young Argentinian players that maybe don't go to Europe but can still make a pretty penny elsewhere outside of Argentina. I don't think Gachado's stepping into the same football environment that he was once in and so successful in, and I don't think it's going to work out, mate.
I completely agree. But that said, Ollie, when I'm in Argentina in August and September and Gachado's back at the Monumental, I will 100% be buying my ticket to see the magic.
If you have a statue at a stadium, you can't go back and be part of that club. If you can stand in front of your own statue, there's something wrong about that. There's
Great
something
chat.
really wrong about that.
Yeah. That should be a sporting rule, an unofficial sporting rule. Once they built the statue, you are no longer allowed to be employed in any meaningful way by that institution.
Yeah. Unless it's a player statue. If you're
and they come back as a coach.
Yeah, that's okay. You're allowed that moment. I'd never recommend it
Still
because I always think
risky.
I think it's a bad idea, but that's more acceptable. But if the statue is built for you as a manager, you have to give up going back to that club again because your time's over.